Hello, everyone. Now, I know that it's hard to keep up on top of what's going on in the Holy Land, but if you want to know more about what's happening here in Israel, I'm Aaron Porras, and this is the Weekly Review.
That is the sound of Israelis all over the country observing a minute of silence this morning, honoring the 6 million Jews that perished in the Holocaust. Every year on this day, a siren sounds at 10 a.m. local and the country comes to a standstill to show respect for the legacy of those we lost. The Prime Minister and the President were among the attendees of the official state memorial ceremony taking place last night at Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum. As the country takes a pause from its political turmoil to commemorate the victims of the Holocaust, the Prime Minister vowed to fight against and prevent those who seek to destroy.
Israeli officials stood outside Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum to mark 1 minute of silence, along with the rest of the country, commemorating the victims of the Holocaust. The president also released a special message on social media about keeping the memory of the Holocaust alive.
We must renew our commitment to work together to preserve the memory of the Holocaust, fight anti-Semitism, and ensure that our shared promise of never again become a shared reality.
Meanwhile, Israel held its official state ceremony for Yom HaShoah on Wednesday at Yad Vashem Museum in Jerusalem. The Prime Minister spoke out against returning to the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran, as talks with world powers about reviving the deal are set to begin this week.
הסכם עם איראן שיסלול את דרכה לנשק גרעיני, נשק שמאיים עלינו בהשמדה, הסכם כזה לא יחייב אותנו כהוא זה. יש רק דבר אחד שיחייב אותנו, למנוע ממי שחותר להשמידנו, לבצע את זממו.
Israel's Holocaust Survivors' Rights Authority said in a report published earlier this year that 17,000 Holocaust survivors died in Israel, including 900 who died of COVID-19. 53,000 survivors have been infected, and the report also states that nearly 140,000 Holocaust survivors live in Israel still today. While optimistic about the future, the president of Israel knows the work has just begun.
There are many reasons to be optimistic, but there is still much to be done.
Chana Rifkin, ILTV.
Well, for the first time since the signing of the Abraham Accords, in addition to in Israel, Holocaust Remembrance ceremonies were carried out in the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain.
On this solemn occasion, the House of the Ten Commandments in Manama, Kingdom of Bahrain, has a special message for the Jewish world, that the Abrahamic Accords have signaled a rebirth of our synagogue, a synagogue that lay dormant since 1948.
Bahrain marked Holocaust Memorial Day in a virtual ceremony initiated by the House of 10 Commandments. They also lit candles, part of what is called the Yellow Candle Project, the global communal effort to remember Holocaust victims. Dubai also lit yellow candles to remember those who were murdered in the Shoah as part of commemorations in the United Arab Emirates. The country even invited a special delegation of Israeli artists and musicians to take part in the event.
Meanwhile, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken sending in his remarks ahead of Holocaust Remembrance Day as well, saying, "We honor the lost by remembering and learning, and that it's the United States' responsibility to do everything to stop evil on a grand scale." Yet this, as United States officials are heading to Vienna to meet with European mediators and Iranian authorities for indirect talks. once again in hopes of returning to the controversial 2015 JCPOA nuclear deal, an agreement that critics say all but assures Iran's nuclear breakthrough and poses an existential threat to Israel. On Tuesday, for the first time, the United States and Iran holding indirect talks in Vienna, hoping to revive the controversial 2015 JCPOA that former President Trump famously pulled out of. The two countries in a stalemate for months, with Tehran demanding the United States first lift crippling sanctions before direct talks are held, while the United States instead calls on Tehran to first reverse its many violations of the deal. So far, though, despite the apparent gridlock, European and Russian mediators calling the discussions positive and constructive, and Washington calling the discussions a healthy step forward. And all this while under a strict time crunch due to the upcoming Iranian elections, where conservatives who are hostile to the JCPOA are expected to win. Israel, on the other hand, a known and vocal opponent to the JCPOA, vowing never to be at the mercy of an enemy again, especially on the eve of Israeli Holocaust Remembrance Day.
הסכנה שאיראן תחזור, והפעם בהסכמה בינלאומית, למסלול שיאפשר לה לפתח ארסנל גרעיני, הסכנה הזאת מונחת לפתחנו. ממש בימים אלה. אסור לחזור להסכם הגרעין המסוכן עם איראן, כי איראן גרעינית היא איום קיומי על מדינת ישראל, ואיום גדול מאוד על ביטחון העולם כולו. במקביל אנחנו חייבים להמשיך לבלום את התוקפנות האיראנית באזורנו. והאיום הזה הוא לא דבר תיאורטי. אני אינני משמיע אותו מן השפה ולחוץ. אנחנו מוכרחים לפעול מול המשטר הקנאי באיראן, שפשוט מאיים למחוק אותנו מעל פני האדמה. בערב יום השואה אני חוזר על העיקרון היסודי שמנחה אותנו. תמיד נדע להגן על עצמנו, בכוחות עצמנו, מול מבקשי נפשנו.
So to that end, Israel reportedly carrying out a strike on an Iranian ship in the Red Sea on Tuesday, allegedly telling the United States that it was in retaliation for previous strikes by Iran against Israeli vessels. Israel has not, however, officially commented on the incident, as per typical policy. We start today, unfortunately, with an alleged attempted car ramming. IDF soldiers in the West Bank shooting and killing the Palestinian suspect in early morning hours of Tuesday and injuring his wife. The incident occurring just northeast of Jerusalem near the town of Bir Nabala. Israeli soldiers setting up a checkpoint roadblock to enable other forces in the area to operate uninterrupted. But according to the IDF sources, the alleged suspect's car initially stopped at the checkpoint before suddenly accelerating towards another group of soldiers in the area, quote, in a way that endangered the lives of the soldiers. And it was at this time that those troops opened fire. There has been a sharp uptick in anti-Israel violence in the area in recent weeks, including fire bombings and rock throwing along the highways, targeting vehicles with Israeli license plates. The alleged suspect's wife, however, rejecting this narrative outright, claiming to have been attacked unprovoked when only out to run an errand. Investigations are ongoing.
And in other news, U.S. State Department is renewing aid to the Palestinians after Donald Trump cut it completely during his presidency. During a press conference, U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price saying that the move is absolutely consistent with U.S. law.
U.S. foreign assistance for the Palestinians serves important U.S. interests and values, including providing critical relief to those in need, fostering economic development, and supporting Israeli-Palestinian understanding, as well as security and stability in a volatile region. It aligns with the values and the interests of the United States, as well as those of our allies and partners. The United States is committed to advancing prosperity, security, and freedom for both Israelis and Palestinians in tangible ways in the immediate term, which is important in its own right, of course, but also as a means to advance towards a negotiated two-state solution.
The Biden administration will reportedly provide around $235 million in U.S. aid to the Palestinians, marking the president's biggest rollback of Trump's Middle East policy since taking over.
All right, now the day has come. Israeli President Reuven Rivlin completing his conferences with the various Knesset parties in hopes of finding anyone capable of cobbling together a coalition and preventing a fifth repeat election.
במצב דברים זה, בו אין רוב של 61 חברי כנסת התומכים במועמד מסוים, ובאין שיקולים אחרים המצביעים על סיכוייו של מי מהמועמדים להרכיב ממשלה, קיבלתי את הכרעתי בהתאם למשתקף ממפת הממליצים, המעידה על סיכוי גבוה מעט של חבר הכנסת בנימין נתניהו להרכיב ממשלה. לפיכך החלטתי להטיל עליו את התפקיד להרכבת הממשלה.
Israeli President Reuven Rivlin finally finishing his last party consultations ahead of the official swearing-in of the 24th Knesset, or parliament. And the first mandate, or chance to put together a government, will go to incumbent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But it's anyone's guess whether a governing coalition can actually be put together, or if fifth serial elections will be called, especially after the first day's consultations yielded disconcerting results, to say the least. The political deadlock continuing relatively unchanged, with nobody getting a clear majority. Rivlin, in his speech, even lamenting Netanyahu's low chances of success, but saying that he's obliged by law to at least give him the chance.
הכרעה זו אינה הכרעה קלה בעיניי, ברמה המוסרית והערכית. כפי שאמרתי בתחילת דבריי, מדינת ישראל איננה דבר מובן מאליו.
At the end of consultations, Prime Minister Netanyahu was receiving 52 votes, while opposition leader Yair Lapid receiving 45. Naftali Bennett of the Yamina party, meanwhile, getting 7 seats from his own party, and the New Hope under Gideon Sa'ar, the Joint Arab List under Ayman Odeh, and Ram under Mansour Abbas, refusing to officially support anyone. So Netanyahu will now have 28 days, with a possible 2-week extension from Rivlin, to form a government. And if at the end of this term no coalition is built, the president will have the option of tasking someone else with the mandate to try. If both chances fail, it's back to the polls this summer. Now talk about a crisis. Neighboring Jordan narrowly avoiding a supposed coup over the weekend. The Hashemite kingdom arresting nearly 20 people, including King Abdullah's half-brother and former Crown Prince Hamza bin Hussein, calling the alleged plan a threat to the country's stability. Hannah Rifkin with the story.
I'm making this recording today to try to explain what's happened over the last few hours with me.
In a video passed onto the BBC over the weekend through his lawyer, former Jordanian Crown Prince and half-brother to the king, Prince Hamza bin Hussein, explaining that he's been placed under house arrest for being involved in discussions critical of the government and of sowing instability in the kingdom. As part of the arrest, Hamza's security detail has been removed. Communications to his home were cut, including phone lines and internet. And Hamza was ordered not to speak with anyone outside of family, including on social media. And all this despite the military confirming that Hamza himself had not made any problematic statements. Rather, it was simply his being present during such discussions that's causing problems for the state. Since being stripped of his official title and removed from the path to the throne in 2004, Hamza has been building ties with tribal leaders who run an anti-government protest movement called the Hirak. And the Hirak in recent weeks has resumed calls for protests.
الأردن مستهدف دائما، يعني الأردن على مدى تاريخه مستهدف، وهناك أيدي خارجية طبعا تلعب دور في زعزعة الاستقرار، لكن هذا بلد دولة عميقة، الأردن دولة عميقة، دولة ثابتة راسخة بقيادة جلالة الملك، ولا يمكن أن يستطيع أحد أن يزعزع الاستقرار في هذا الوطن.
Allegations going on to say that Hamza and the others who were arrested plan to spark civil unrest in the country in the form of popular uprising, backed by tribal groups and maybe even a yet unnamed foreign actor.
ولا أحد فوق القانون، لا أحد حسب الدستور الأردني، لا أحد فوق القانون، وهناك سيادة للقانون في المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية. ما جرى أمس جرى التعامل معه. أي شخص يسعى إلى زعزعة الأمن والاستقرار في هذا الوطن سيتصدى له الدولة الأردنية بكل قوة.
But His Highness did not refrain from communications or continued criticisms as ordered. Hamza repeatedly taking to social media through various channels since his arrest to expose the conflict from his perspective. Denying involvement in any conspiracy or nefarious organization, Hamza saying that the country's 10 million people have become increasingly stymied in corruption, nepotism, and misrule, while not being allowed to criticize. His arrest in itself serving as proof. Meanwhile, an outpouring of support both for the government's actions and for Prince Hamza coming in, including from Israel, where Hamza's personal friend Roy Shapshanik offered to temporarily house Hamza's wife and children. but most just relaying confidence in the systems at play, largely ignoring accusations of corruption levied against the prince.
أنا مطمن إجمالا أنا مطمن لأنه إحنا هاي زي ما أنت شايف ما في أي مظاهر عسكرية بالبلد وهي أنا طالع من الصبح وأنا مش رايح على الشغل أنا تسوق نازل ما يعني أنا مرتاح من اللي قاعد بيصير متأكد إنه الموضوع راح ينحل سريع.
Now, as COVID rates continue dropping and life returns to some broad form of normal, new students are arriving from abroad to study here in Israel for the first time in what feels like forever. So Manuel Kadosh went to Ben Gurion Airport to welcome the first flight to arrive.
Since 1972, Jewish National Fund's U.s Aid's Alexander Muss High School in Israel has stood out as one of the premier Israeli academic institutions for students studying abroad. Unfortunately, due to the COVID-19 lockdown restrictions, JNF was forced to suspend its spring semester for the first time in the school's history until today. JNF, in collaboration with El Al Airlines, is one of the first Israeli organizations to receive approval from the Israeli government to bring over 240 students to live and study here in Israel for the first time in 2021.
So this is the Alexander Muss High School in Israel program of Jewish National Fund United States, where we are bringing teens from around the world, predominantly at the moment from the United States, but it's become a global program, and they're coming from everywhere to Israel to continue the academic studies at the highest level, and at the same time soak in Zionism and the love for Israel and their heritage. This last year was much anticipation and a lot of hard work on behalf of a lot of people.
Sometimes the Jewish people know how to all work together. So this was a great opportunity where the hero is Zohar Vlotsky, who's a Kakal emissary working with JNF, and it's a great example of when all the different organizations start to work together.
Having them come, there's no incoming planes, people cannot come to Israel yet from abroad, but everyone came together, all these partners gathered so we could bring them all here today, and we succeeded. So this is the first of many more to come.
We've got a marvelous campus in Hod HaSharon. We have 4 dormitories that have been prepared for.
Moving on now, well, we have certainly come a long way, and after nearly 8 years of development, the Israel Air Force is getting an upgrade for its aircraft arsenal. An advanced intelligence gathering aircraft called the Oron. Using state-of-the-art radar systems and artificial intelligence, the new spy jet can receive vast amounts of data from enemy territory. The plane, manufactured by Israel Aerospace Industries, is expected to begin operations in the coming days with the IAF's 122 Nachshon squadron.
All right, finally, the future of urban air mobility is here. With cities around the world at their max for congestion, Israeli aviation company Urban Aeronautics is taking to the air, providing the ultimate solution for saving time and even lives. This self-proclaimed car-sized aircraft offering safe and quick transport with the ability to navigate and land in locations that no other passenger aircraft has ever been capable of, until now.
What if cars could fly? Thanks to the leading Israeli aviation company Urban Aeronautics, flying cars are about to become a reality. It is a car-sized urban aircraft that may revolutionize the future of air mobility in a safe, quiet, sustainable, and profitable way. The ILTV team had to go and see the City Hawk with their own eyes. Haran Ben Eliyahu, the Vice President of Business Development of Urban Aeronautics, took us on a tour to give us a deeper insight of this incredible invention.
This is actually the first prototype that our founder, Dr. Rafi Yoeli, built in Tel Aviv in his apartment in 2002. And then he took it out and proved that the technology actually works. That's why he named the company Urban Aeronautics, because he built a thing that could fly people around cities, in and out, from rooftop to rooftop. We manufacture everything ourselves. You can see some of the components are from carbon fiber. This is very strong and very light. You can feel for yourself. We also manufacture the blades, which is a very unique. There's only a handful of companies that can create this kind of product. You can see our actually flying prototype, which is a 1-ton vehicle with a jet engine and 2 ducted fans, and already flew 300 test flights here in Israel. This is just 80% of the size of the actual product. The City Hawk, which we envision to be the air taxi, is going to be 20% bigger.
And to tell us more about their vision of aviation transportation is the CEO, Nimrod Golan Yanai.
Urban Aeronautics' vision is to lead the new future of urban air mobility. The City Hawk revolution is going to be introduced to the public in phases. Probably the first use cases are going to be EMS, emergency medical services, where you can access a car accident or any other incident in minutes. Then to be followed up with airport shuttle, for example, taking off from JFK to Manhattan. Then to be followed with air taxi, full-scale utilization, for the public, mobility as a service.
City Hawk is equipped with groundbreaking internal rotor fancraft technology.
When you have an aircraft that has no external rotors, then suddenly you can introduce aviation into the urban environment.
This state-of-the-art technology brings the dream of air mobility to everyone and everywhere.
When we develop the City Hawk, we do not aim for, just the rich people. We aim for all of us to use it. So it's going to be pretty much the same cost as taking an Uber all the way from JFK to Manhattan.
And topping it off, Urban Aeronautics uses eVTOL twin engines, and future eVTOL models of City Hawk will run on hydrogen, known to be a completely sustainable power source.
We're going to be the first eVTOL in the world that is going to use hydrogen fuel cell to fly.
The Israeli-based aviation company, in its first stage of manufacturing, now preparing to develop prototypes and is set to be ready for production in 3 to 5 years.
We see a lot of movements around the financial markets towards eVTOL developers like ourselves. Now it's the perfect time to step into this domain.
Thanks to Urban Aeronautics, the future is already taking off. Through the Investination platform, you can join the growth of Israel's up-and-coming startup technology. Investination is an investment platform developed by the Basadno Investment Group. Basadno affords its investors the opportunity to invest in some of the most promising startups. Visit investination.com to learn more.
And that's it for ILTV's Weekly Review. I'm Aaron Porras. See you next week.